Okay, and also to record, there we go. So I am calling the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the UNNC Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm Laura Myers. I'm the co-chair of this committee, and I am on the board of UNNC, and I live in Angeles Vista. And I'm going to pass the baton temporarily to John Arnold, the actual chair. I am the co-chair.
Hey everybody, I'm John Arnold, governing board of UNNC. I am the area representative for Area 6, which is east side of Jefferson Park. I'm the co-chair of this committee, and thanks for coming.
Okay, and I am going to share the screen with our agenda. And please let me know when you can see the agenda.
We can see.
Yeah. Okay, so we'd like to draw your attention to item number 1, determination to continue to hold meetings virtually, and that is true through March 29th. The Board of Neighborhood Commissioners and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment have established that BOC has the authority to adopt AB 361 findings on behalf of the city's neighborhood council, and to determine that due to the COVID-19 state of emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees. This meeting is being conducted virtually pursuant to that directive, and BOC has adopted one last, back in February, one last 30-day extension of that order. So as of for this committee, we will be back meeting in person and in a hybrid, so be in person and Zoom. So next on the agenda, welcome all the order, review of UNNC standing rules for committee stakeholder voting participation, introductions and voting affirmations, and review of the agenda. John, did you want me to run through the review of standing rules?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the UNNC standing rules for committee stakeholders and voting participation, essentially we appoint the chairs and 4 co-chairs of all of our committees. And beyond that, since we use our committees in part as an outreach for our community stakeholders, any stakeholder, any person who lives in our community, works in our community, worships, and or owns property within our boundaries, and last but not least, can be declared as a community interest stakeholder, is a member of the committee for all purposes for the time that they are attending the committee. They may make motions, obviously participate in discussions, and vote. A community interest stakeholder is someone who participates in a nonprofit 501c3 organization which does things in our community and which has a brick and mortar address within, and that's the change City Council made a couple of years back. The address. So the next part of this is everyone introduces themselves and affirm whether or not they will be voting based on their stakeholder status. So I am a stakeholder, I will vote. John, I assume same for you. If you're here. John is in and out.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to pass the baton to Teresa, who introduce yourself, and then you can pass the baton to the next person you see.
Okay, thank you, Laura. My name is Teresa Masonette. I represent the West Adams Avenues on the board of the UNNC, and I will be voting tonight. Chris Carlson.
Okay, did you guys lose the screen? Because I did, the share screen.
No, we share this, we see the screen.
Okay, fine, I got it.
Hello, good evening. My name is Chris Carlson, and I am the area rep for Area 4, which is Western Heights and Kenny Heights, and I'm a member of UNNC and a stakeholder. I live on 20th Street. Thank you.
Steve,
I'm Steve Peckman. I am a stakeholder. I live in Jefferson Park.
Richard,
Evening, everyone. My name is Richard Parks. I'm a longtime resident. I'm a stakeholder. I work in UNNC in the neighborhood council area.
thank you. I think I saw Brittany here.
Hi there, Hakeem Park Davis, Council District 10. I won't be voting today.
Okay. I'm done with who I can see on the screen.
Donna Jones.
Okay, Donna.
Hello, Donna Jones, West Adams Avenues. I am a stakeholder and I will be voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany Lou.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Liu. I'm a resident of the West Adams neighborhood and a stakeholder who will be voting tonight. Thanks.
I believe that's all, Laura.
I think there's not a phone, somebody on the phone.
I don't see it.
Okay, all right, that's great. So reviewing the agenda very quickly, we will have, as always, general public comments on items not on the agenda. We do have on this agenda for 1422 South St. Andrews. I did get a slightly confusing email from the representative saying we are going to attend the meeting, and then wrote that the applicant, meaning the owner, unfortunately has COVID and has put the case on hold. I mean, the project on hold. So I wasn't sure if he meant he's coming tonight or at some future time. So we may table that one if he's not here. Next one is some plans for an infill residence on 10th on a permanently vacant lot. I do have the plans. I do not personally reach out to the applicant, so we'll decide whether or not we're going to have much more than a 5-minute discussion. The draft ordinance, Chris, can I just quickly go through it, and then I'll call on you. The draft ordinance for the site plan review. There was a hearing on the site, which not I've seen a presentation, so that's the next on the agenda. Streetscape improvements for Crenshaw Crossings update. And
Laura,
yeah.
Laura, your audio is breaking up pretty badly.
Okay.
That's better.
That's
All
better.
right. I'll just do a lot of yelling tonight, sadly. And last but not least,
I don't think you need to yell. You just need to lean in closer to the computer.
okay. All right. That's okay then now? Perfect. And our last be follow up to previous cases, old business, and there may be other things that someone may bring up, but we certainly have an update regarding the Murphy oil drilling site. So, Chris, any question, or were you telling me you couldn't hear me?
It was only about the poor audio. I was trying to, but thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the share because that might help. And I'm also going to close some other windows. That might help. And here we are there. So is there anyone who wants to make any public comment on any item not on the agenda? Please raise your hand if so. Oh, and I'd like to say welcome to Ethan Polk, who has arrived. He wanted to introduce himself. Up to you.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Ethan Polk, resident of the West Adams Avenues.
Thank you so much. Teresa.
I do not have a public announcement. I just have a question. If we could, if I can get some clarification based on the agenda. Is that okay, Laura?
Yeah, of course.
So I know we, many months ago, we revised or added clarification to who is a community member, who is a standing member that can vote. Can I get some clarification on that? I have questions about 2 community members that are participating tonight. I'd like to know if they meet the qualifications of those people who can vote.
Okay, sure, I guess. This is John's agenda item. Is John here? I mean, this is John's the chair who added this. Is John with us at the moment?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, so the rules are, and to be a stakeholder, Laura, if you come in with us, you have to live here, work here. You have to be affiliated with an organization that has a brick and mortar presence in the neighborhood. And is there anything else to add to that?
Yeah, and it must be a nonprofit 501c3. So it's not, I mean, if it's your workplace, it can be whatever. But if you're claiming community interest stakeholder status, what the city council voted, over UNNC's objections, just let's be clear, but what city council voted was that it must be a 501c3 charitable nonprofit, and it had to have an address within the boundaries, and it had to, do something within the boundaries. So, so the an address doesn't mean it has to be the principal address, and the do something does mean that it's not good enough to have a headquarters here if your real book of business is in Willowbrook or Compton. You have to, have the organization itself has to have a stake in the community, and then it has to have an address. The person who participates in the organization does not need to have an address within the community. But it's the same criteria as for getting a ballot to vote for an at-large representative or being eligible to run for the board.
Okay, so I just need for you to give me clarification that everyone who identified themselves as a stakeholder and they want to vote, you are approving, you and John approve those community members.
Well,
So
I
it's
would
not us. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't know where Brittany lives. She'll have to tell you. I can say that Richard is probably thinking about one organization and or his work, but I also know that he's, for example, a longtime member of West Adams Heritage, which is an eligible organization. So I don't know that that's what he meant, but Richard would qualify just, maybe not in the same way he thinks he qualifies, but I don't know about Brittany.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, and please let me know if it's wrong, but I added my streets there, so hopefully.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. I appreciate that.
Okay, so moving on. Did anyone actually, thank you, Teresa. I mean, sorry I finished that item too quickly. Does anybody have any general public comments? And hearing none and not seeing anyone here at the moment from 1422 South St. Andrews, is it okay to table that one? Folks, do we agree to table it?
Yes, I believe so, Laura.
Okay, so item 5 is an infill residence on 10th Avenue. There is no address, so I can't give you an address, but it's the vacant lot just south of the 10 freeway on the east side of the street. This is a proposed new single-family home to be constructed on that. It's a freeway remnant vacant lot. And the project has been reviewed by the West Adams Terrace HPOZ, and the application indicates that it is compliant with the preservation plan. I don't have further insight on that, but in addition, and why it hits us, is that the applicant will also be requesting adjustments to FAR, and FAR is, John, if I'm saying this correctly, essentially the bulk of the house compared to the space on the lot. So there may be limitations under normal circumstances to the FAR. And in addition, the side yard is smaller than normal. But I hope I just explained the FAR on this correctly. Teresa,
So FAR is basically just the floor area of all floors. I think it's that has a minimum height. I think if it's above, I can't remember what the height limit is, but if it's over 6 feet or over 7 feet or something, that counts, and has a floor, that counts as floor area. So everything inside a single family home would count. Basement doesn't count. Technically the exterior walls don't count. And, if there was mechanical equipment somewhere, that wouldn't count, but it's basically every bit of square footage in a house.
To add on to that, the floor area ratio is the floor area ratio. It's the amount of floor area that can be built times the divisible, how many floor plates, basically. So if you're in an R2 zone, you have a 3-to-1. So you go the area of the lot minus the setbacks times 3. And that's the floor area allowed, not necessarily approved.
Right, so you have your hand up. And I'm very much trying, I don't know what we're seeing on the share screen. Do we have the project in front of us on the share screen?
Yes, we do.
It looks like we see a driveway.
Well,
No, actually, that's the house. But Laura, maybe what we should do, because I did not get that contact information from James. By the way, James, my husband James is on the HPOZ, and they did review this project, but I don't have his information, Laura. So should we table this till I can get that to you, and you can invite him to
yes, that would be fine. Steve has his hand up, and then I do want to say one thing, and then we should table it if he doesn't have a meeting. Go ahead, Steve.
I think that Teresa answered my question, which is, so the applicant says they're compliant with the HPOZ plan. My question was, what does the HPOZ board have to say about it?
No, they approved it.
Okay.
Right. It's just because it's caught up with a zoning administration case, their approval kind of sits around, and the zoning administrator, him or herself, makes that final decision. The main thing I was going to say is, because it is a freeway eminent domain remnant site, parcel, there's a lot more rights for the applicant to actually build, even though it's almost an unbuildable site, and rights for the waivers for some of these, the zoning requirements. So I think you guys can see right now where the site is and how it's teeny compared, but beyond that, I think we should just table it.
I support tabling it.
Okay. Stopping the share. Okay. And I think I saw, Rosie has joined us. Okay, the next item on the agenda, draft ordinance CPC 2023-1083 CA, which is proposed changes to the citywide city site plan review SPR for residential projects. We could take a look at the draft ordinance that will be going to the City Planning Commission in April and City Council subsequently, that would change the rules for the threshold for which residential projects would be required to submit to, again, SPR is site plan review. Currently, that is at 50 or more units. Under the mayor's recent executive director, the current rules allow now for 100% affordable projects actually to be exempt from all site plan review requirements. So there's no changes proposed. When they started the process, many city planning of amending the site plan review, that executive order was not in place. And given that the order could cease being in place, they're going to continue to push on. But at this point, the amendment to the ordinance would also allow any affordable units in mixed income projects also to be exempt from the threshold total. So, John, you looked into this a little or a lot. And if you're here.
Yes, I understand what this is. And so what it is that all sites have this base zoning density. And so if a site has 49 units as the base density, which is dividing the lot size by the density allowed. Say if it's an R3 zone, it would be divided by 800, and you get number of units. And then when you go get a density bonus, you can add a certain number of. Hold on, I've got too much going on around me right now. You add onto that, you can add density onto that. So if you go over 50 units, you get site plan review, which has more discretionary review pieces to it. It's not just by right. There's things that will get reviewed. So if you have 40, so how can I explain this simply?
Well,
So
I'm bringing up the presentation.
Okay.
And you can tell me if you can see it.
Yes, I can.
Okay, maybe, here we go.
And what is
site
what
plan review?
what it's saying is if a developer adds affordable units that pushes them over that threshold, they still don't have to apply to site plan review. So if I have a lot that's 49 that I'm using as a base is 49 units, and I add 5 affordable units, I still don't have site plan review. If I add 20 affordable units, I still don't have site plan review. But if I add over 50 market rate units, I have site plan review. And I have my opinion. So that's basically what they're saying. I have my opinion on how developers think because I work with developers all the time. But when we get to the discussion, I can go into that.
Okay, so I'm moving along the presentation. So the question was that the staff answered, why is the amendment needed? And the answer is we're experiencing a severe housing crisis driven by a lack of available affordable homes. And one of the things that our recently adopted housing element identified is that the site plan review process itself is a constraint to the production of affordable housing. And Chris has her hand up.
It's the longstanding purpose of site plan review to look at important aspects of, say, safety and make sure that habitability requirements are actually baked in, and so that substandard projects can't come through without review. Is that why site plan review has been part of the process? Because I'm concerned that we don't create a loophole where by adding a minuscule number of affordable units allows a largish project to not have the proper reviews that ensure that it would be, safe and habitable to the people who might eventually live there.
Okay. Steve has his hand up, and I believe somebody else has their hand up, but I can only see one of the two hands. Steve?
So building on what Chris said, it seems to me that people who are in need of low income or affordable units have even more of a need to be protected from substandard housing, right? Because otherwise we're placing them at double jeopardy. And so I personally don't understand why this would be waived for smaller developments, and why I recognize we're in a housing crisis, but at the same time, if the rules aren't there to help protect the people who are ultimately going to live there, then the rules shouldn't exist. So it seems to me the rules are there to help protect them, and we still need to protect people who are going to inhabit these homes.
Great. Well, are there any other hands raised? Because we good. My concern in part is that so the mayor's already waived it for projects that are 100% affordable. Those tend to be well designed. They're out seeking public funds, and I think that people who grant the funds want to see good design. I'm concerned that I'm looking at a presentation prepared by the planning department, looking at this slide where they spin it. There's many examples where project size has been reduced to avoid SPR. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. but therefore reducing the overall number of affordable housing units. That seems like a stretch to conflate those two concepts, because most SPR projects are not in the past did not have affordable housing, and resulting in an inefficient use of public funds. But there aren't public funds necessarily put in to market rate larger projects. So it's they're conflating some ideas here. I see Hakeem has his hand up, so he's either going to chide me or explain them.
I'm going to explain. So, and I'll just put on my hat. I'm your deputy for planning now, but before I worked with CD10, I was a project planner in Silver Lake Echo Park, Boyle Heights. So site plan review is triggered when you have a project that's 50 or more units, or a commercial project that's 50,000 square feet of commercial space or more. And what that essentially is a fail-safe to make sure that larger projects have some level of review. The site plan review process was really designed before there was a density bonus, before there was TOC, or before there were projects that were seeking these affordable incentives. So the update of this ordinance is really looking at how do you allow developments that are going to bring in high quality affordable housing without stifling them through the SPR process. So specific plan or site plan review requires CEQA separately than a TOC, for instance. So if you have a TOC project that's more than 50 units, the TOC standards defer automatically to density bonus, which assumes that site plan review is already to be had. But if you were to have a project, let's say that's not seeking TOC, it wants to do 100 units, and they're proposing 90 of those units to be affordable, that developer would then, even if it were a by right project, would be kicked into SPR simply because they're more than 50 units. And I think the initiative here is really to give grace to those projects that are coming in with goodwill, good design, and they provide a needed product, and really just cutting a little bit of the red tape out. So like the base density, like John was explaining, can sometimes cause a developer to reduce the size of their project. Let's say, I'm a developer that comes in and I say, I want to build 51 units. And then you realize that 51 units by density standards is by right, but because the city has this policy of site plan review that's triggered by 50 units, now they have to go through an entitlement process. So they might reduce the size of their project to 49 units to avoid the trigger of site plan review and the elongated cost and time that it takes to process a site plan review. So that's my elucidation.
Okay, so I don't know who raised their hand first, Chris or Steve. Yeah, both of you are
Let's
muted.
do Steve. Let's do Steve first.
So thanks, Hakeem. I really appreciate that explanation. But you used the phrase that site plan review was to ensure high quality housing.
Mm-hmm.
So by definition, then site plan review is actually accomplishing an important goal. And so what's replacing site plan review to ensure high quality housing?
Well, so now that we use density bonus and TOC more so for larger projects, you have design guidelines that are embedded in the city's design guidelines. So every project would be subject to those 360 design guidelines. Now, whether or not the planner who's working on the project is implementing those guidelines and being held accountable is a whole nother story. But the site plan review is kind of a repetitive process when you talk about larger affordable housing projects that are already being reviewed by a housing unit, that are already going through a design checklist. So the site plan review is an added cost. To do a site plan review, I believe the cost is like $9,000 to $15,000, depending on the size of the project. So it adds an exorbitant cost, but it also takes much more time for the planner to have to write findings for not only the density bonus and the housing entitlement, but then to go back and write more findings that would also be subject to an appeal jeopardy twice over. So the planner does more work to make the same findings, and it creates more jeopardy for affordable housing projects that that might otherwise be more than 50 units.
So the planner does more work, meaning that they actually have to read the plan rather than the checklist and go through an entire process. It seems to me what you're saying is there's no added benefit between actually going through the plans and coming up with specific findings as opposed to just reviewing a checklist.
That's right, because the findings are already necessary to make the entitlement for TOC or density bonus anyway. And if you're doing a density bonus project or a TOC project that asks for more than base incentives, it's already subject to design guidelines. If you're just asking for the base incentives, you could build a matchstick building and no one could tell you any different. But if you're asking for more incentives than the base, then it does become subject to design criteria, the 360 design guidelines I was mentioning. But the site plan review, it only checks for things like access, where are cars coming in and out, what are the intersections of pedestrians, where are the entrances located, where are the lighting located, what's the landscape like. So a lot of those things are already integrated into the design guidelines for the larger projects. So like the larger affordable projects that are seeking more than 50 units, they're going to be well designed, like Laura mentioned. So it kind of is duplicative work for the planner, and it makes it take longer to get the entitlements done for affordable housing projects when they could have, very well be done simply over the counter.
So just one last question, and
Sure.
I won't take up all the time. With the elimination of the site plan review, does that change the level of community input that's allowable to challenge a planner's decision?
No, it does not. So as of right now, site plan review does not require any hearings, but it is appealable. So it wouldn't change that context at all. All density bonus cases, all environmental cases, all TOC cases have limits their appealability. So there's room to opine there. But I think in general, the notion of easing red tape around development is where the state is going with this. So a lot of the implementations you see to streamline affordable housing development is predicated by state law. Even this ordinance is predicated by streamlining affordable provisions.
Okay, I'll just end with easing red tape can be a good thing. It could also lead to disasters, right? Which we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, and we're seeing with oil pipelines, and we're seeing in lots of areas of government deregulation. So though I certainly understand the importance of eliminating unnecessary red tape, there's a fine line between unnecessary and necessary in many of these issues. I appreciate your educating me on this. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Chris, then John, and then me. No, Chris, you're muted. You're still muted.
Yep.
There you are.
Okay, got it. Sorry. So looking at the slide that's in front of us, from Hakeem, I wanted confirmation. This would only affect 100% affordable development projects and also only exclude affordable units from mixed income developments from the overall threshold count of 50. So because what we've been seeing, we have not been seeing a lot of 100% affordable projects come in. What we've been seeing is full market projects that are giving the bare minimum number, usually 10%, to extremely low income to reduce the number of units they're having to make available to affordable. And, I want to make sure this doesn't create a loophole where people can further game the system and continually do the minimum of affordable housing. So in this case, if they were at, say, 50 and they did 3 affordable, they could go to 53 or 52 and stay under the 50. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So they'd have to keep trading out units into affordable to be able to get, you know, on a one-to-one basis to get one more unit.
However, they would still be bound by the base density because any incentive that's provided for additional density is based on their base density, what's allowed by right. And then a certain percentage of that number is added. So they would not per se be able to say 53, and then they have magically 50 or 3 more units because they moved those 3 units or excluded those 3 units. The base density would still be the same.
Still staying the same. Okay.
Mhm.
I get it. All right. That seems a reasonable, well-focused goal for this without throwing, you know, everything out with the bathwater.
Right. But you and here that's exactly like the notion of this is that if you have a project that has a base density and then, you know, with the density bonus, it gets to 53, you don't want those 3 units that cause a 9-month delay and $15,000 and more findings and more legal work. So this would accept those 3 units. So they say, okay, let's just count it at 50. Those 3 units that are affordable, we're excluding those from the count, and we can move this project forward without exceeding the threshold of another entitlement.
But you also mentioned that without the site plan review, it depended upon the individual planner doing the due diligence. And as you said, there didn't imply that there was some backstop to make sure the individual planners do the proper due diligence. Is there something in this that will put that backstop so we don't have projects that have diligent planners and projects that have a little bit sloppy planners and things come through that no one would want to see built and wouldn't be safe for the occupants?
Yeah, that's where you and I come in. You know, I have to hawk these projects. And, you know, there's a lot of people in this call that know I'm pretty stringent on high quality projects, but also it relies, you know, on the community to be able to feed back to the planner, like, hey, you know, this orientation of the project is bad. We can't work with that. But with, you know, a lot of the density bonus cases specifically that this is targeting, objective design standards are not a prohibition to project approval. So there's kind of like a fine dance that planners and the community have to play with the development community to get, you know, to get good products.
Okay, so John is next.
Hey, everybody. So working, you know, everyone knows that I work with developers all the time. And site plan review is not that onerous. It's not a heavy design review. They're just looking to see that, make sure bigger projects aren't doing something unintended to the surrounding neighborhood, to make sure it gives that second set of eyes. It is not a rigorous design review. And it's also not that difficult to get through. A lot of the conditions are boilerplate. And, you know, they have to do with bird nesting and things like this. So they're large boilerplate stuff, and just keeps bigger projects from having a bigger impact or unintended bigger impact, but it's not design review. So that said, I have worked with some developers who are on that threshold at 52, and they say, we knock off 3 units, we're not no site plan review. They do it so they don't have to go through the process, which can be time consuming, 6 months, 9 months. However, if a developer is entitled to 60 units, they will not take 10 units off to avoid site plan review. That is not worth it. That is unless they bought the land 20 years ago. So I think this is going to have minimal impact in that threshold of 50, 51, 52, 53 units, but it will not affect 100 unit projects. And no developer is going to take out 50 units to get under site plan review and get their base of market rate units below 50. The numbers just don't pencil out. So I think this is a gesture mostly. I don't think it's going to really impact anything except there's right in that sweet spot of like between 50 and 60 units. So I think that's a report from what actually happens. And again, it doesn't ensure better design necessarily, just a second set of eyes.
Okay, so Teresa has raised her hand. I'm going to call on Teresa, then I'm calling on me.
Oh, no, Laura, go right ahead. I know that you mentioned you were next, so go right ahead.
Oh, okay. So, well, one thing that bothers me, it does not bother me that if somebody's proposing to add some very low unit, you know, income units, or ELI or VLI, or even low, because this slide doesn't even say extremely low income. Those are people who really are low income. And each category has a different percentage of requirements. So we are seeing mostly ELI, extremely low income, because it's more or less depending on where the project's located, but it's usually around 10 or 11% is required. So for if the base is 15, and base is probably more, but that'd be 5 more units. So it doesn't seem very egregious. But moderate income, I asked Matt Glesney, who's one of the housing people in planning department, why is moderate income being included in this? Because these days, moderate income is a category that starts at around $75,000 a year for a one-person household through $120,000. So that's fairly high income. That's not high income. It's considered by whoever does these considerations to be moderate income. It is the missing middle that UNNC actually wants housing opportunities for, but that also requires a much higher percentage. I think, John, you might know this better than me, but maybe 20% of the units. So that could bring the unit count up much higher, and it's still not affordable housing by what we're kind of thinking affordable housing is, right? Helping the people who are most in need of housing. So I'm a little concerned that in this ordinance, we're going to give this exemption to what a lot of us would think is kind of market rate for rental housing, not market rate for purchase housing. And so that's one of my concerns. And I will say
Laura,
that
this actually will be for both rental and for sale. It would apply to both.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying that I'm not sure we need to have an ordinance that exempts a project that's really focused on people whose beginning salaries for single is $75,000 and then up. So the project is and up. Gets exempted from SBR. And what the planning staff members who presented this said, this was at the citywide land check for neighborhood councils. I did not go to the public presentation last night. But they said the principal reason now that they're still pushing forward on this, since the executive order from the mayor already said for 100% affordable, it's exempt from SBR. So the principal reason they're still pushing forward is to avoid the CEQA and appeals on CEQA. And, I'm not convinced that that's a good public purpose. I mean, in other words, it feels like this is a really good idea, but it's just weird how it's being presented. Teresa.
Thank you, Laura. I have 2 questions, actually. Maybe you can answer these, Hakeem. If I heard you correctly, you said that if we were to eliminate the site plan review, one of the areas that would not be reviewed would be the landscaping. And as you know, I'm all about the trees. So I'd like to know at what point would the review of the trees be taken into consideration? And also I'd like to know, I know right now planning has several documents, an environmental assessment form, a tree disclosure statement, and a tree report template. Would those documents still be required if we no longer have site plan review?
Hi, Teresa. Yeah, none of the requirements for the design would change with this. There would still be landscape review. There would still be, facade audit and the rest, looking at the whole 360 design of the project. The parkway and the trees would also be independently reviewed. The required reports would still have to be submitted. So this doesn't, change any requirements. This is just allowing projects that otherwise would hit that 50 number threshold of units to get out of that process when it comes to being triggered by affordable units.
Right. Then maybe I misunderstood you because I thought when you mentioned some of the things that would be eliminated for review, you said landscaping. So,
Well, what I'm saying is the site plan review process itself, like John mentioned, it looks at the project as a whole, and it looks at how the project interacts with its surroundings. And landscape is a part of that. Parkway, sidewalks, those are all a part of the review process. However, there's also another process embedded called the design review process that also looks at those things. So there's no loss of review. There's no loss of opportunity for community engagement. There's no loss of opportunity for appeal. It's just giving those projects that are like, Laura used the word sweet spot, projects that kind of fit into this sweet spot that might be providing affordable housing that, real affordable housing that we need and want, but they might get discouraged, or it might take them, instead of a 3-month processing without site plan review, because they have 53 units now, they have to go through the site plan review process, and that process will take a year. And it makes a little bit of a difference internally for the city, because I'm just reflecting on my time as a project planner. One planner might have 100 cases, okay? And they have to cycle their time every day through all of those cases to keep them on track and moving forward so that they get to you all and be ready for real presentation at City Council or Plum. So what this is really doing is lightening the burden on the planners, because a lot of them have affordable housing projects when they're not affordable housing experts. And the only reason that they have these projects, on their desk, and they're literally held up because there's other work that these planners have to do. This will take those projects that are in the sweet spot and move them off of that planner's desk and send them to the affordable housing unit that the mayor has created. She has a new deputy mayor of affordable housing, and they created a new unit for expediting this processing. Those people will then be processing these affordable housing projects at a priority that supersedes these market rate projects. That's the whole idea. But there will be a city planning commission meeting coming up. And I don't expect a whole lot of controversy, but I do expect a lot more support from especially the affordable housing development community, and then the consulting community that represents a lot of these projects.
great. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Okay, so John, I see your hand. Is it up again?
No, I forgot to take it down. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, I still have a couple of, now I have a question. So Hakeem, this new unit that the mayor is creating, is that for 100% affordable or for anything with an affordable component?
I think it's substantial affordable component. I believe that they're working with anything with 60% or more.
Okay, well, that'd be 100.
Yeah, that's close to it.
Well, that would be 100 because we learned on Crenshaw Crossing that there's no funding for 60% affordable projects. It's either 20 or 100%, apparently. So it's an irony that there's different other barriers to creation of affordable housing, and one of them is the funding sources.
And we'll get to that when we get to our item.
Yeah, and then I was going to say the other, problem. We have I don't even know if you've seen it, Hakeem, but we have a hopefully still pending great, beautiful 182 unit project pending behind the Food for Less at 18th and Leicester. Yeah. And the reason it's still pending and not moving forward had nothing to do with its site plan review. Through that. It's the, I'm forgetting what it's called. Teresa, it's the recreation park fees. What's that called?
Yep.
Yep. And they were $2 million or something. It's like, oh, deep breath, we can't do that. The developer really is having a problem coming up with those funds. And it's been a several-year delay. So, not that I don't want funds for our work, but it would seem that this whole effort, site plan review, I think, is a much less barrier than some of the other things that developers have to deal with. But That's just me being political, which I'm gonna post it. Anyway, I'm gonna post in the chat where you send, if anyone has comments to write it, and then post it in the chat as soon as I stop the share. But as you can see here, the City Planning Commission meeting is at the moment scheduled for April 27th. So this is a very much a fast track. And I don't remember what the last 3 slides. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to post in the chat. Quimby funds is the answer. So I don't want to get rid of Quimby funds. I'm just saying that seems to be another area for creating a great deal of housing, but we need the Quimby funds, or at least the funding method, because if you're creating that much housing, especially for families, you need to have the parks too. So I'm going to move on, and then at some point I'm going to put in the chat all of that information. So the next item on the agenda is streetscape improvements for Crenshaw Crossing update. So LADOT and Essos Real Estate, which is some sort of inheritor to Watt development, Watt, the company, will be conducting a community outreach meeting on March, doesn't say, 23rd, regarding potential for planned sidewalk, crosswalk, accessible curb ramps, trees, street lighting, bike lane improvements on Crenshaw Boulevard and on Obama Boulevard adjacent to Crenshaw Crossing. I'm having a little trouble here with my mouth.
Right front. You can plug it into your computer. I don't want.
I'm hearing voices. Are we commenting to me or to someone else?
Chris, please.
Okay, so in any case, at the time we did the agenda, UNNC had not been contacted at all. I've subsequently had some conversations, and a lot of information has been now posted in the agenda packet. So what I posted in the agenda packet was a hearing notice for this workshop sort of hearing next week. Many of the prior materials that UNNC has been dealing with over the many years of conversation about the Crenshaw Streetscape Plan and then the first last mile for Metro. If you go to our agenda packet, the current material, which is not much, is in the main part of the packet, and then you'll see a subfolder called previous Crenshaw Streetscape or something like that. And I've posted other plans. I know, Hakeem, that you're here about this. What I'm going to say first is I did today have a long conversation with the LADOT staffer, because the emails circulating there are not wrong. Are people saying, didn't we spend hours and hours already talking about first mile, last mile for this, not for Crenshaw Crossing so much, but for the intersection of the Expo line and the Crenshaw line stations? And I add to that, and didn't we spend even many more hours, countless meetings before that with the Crenshaw Streetscape Plan, which has been adopted by the City Council and which is part of the planning department, and it's also part of the general plan mobility and transportation element. And LADOT can't yet tell us if they're reinventing anything or not, but the gist of the conversation today, whether it's true or false, was that the LADOT was looking through these things as sort of suggestions. And I was saying the streetscape plan is sort of adopted by City Council. It's not a suggestion, it is actual and real, and they shouldn't be doing something different. So that was where I came from. So Hakeem, you may have better insight on this.
Yeah, so you may have heard that the Crenshaw Crossing project has, they've touted this very ambitious plan to covenant a large majority of the units in the 400 unit project.
Right.
And I can't recall if it's 70% or 80%. But in order to achieve that, they need a level of subsidy to help make the project possible. And one of the avenues that they're seeking is the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant program. And essentially what it is they have to demonstrate that the project can increase transit alternatives in order to get this funding. I believe the funding amount that they're seeking through this grant is 35 million. But they have to propose a number of transportation alternative implementations projects within one half mile of the project site. So they proposed a number of things on Crenshaw, on Expo, Martin Luther King, to name a few. So what I would like to know is if you guys have any thoughts on what's being proposed. And to answer your question, Laura, I did advise the project team, which is West Angeles Church and Ethos, that, to take into account the Transportation Plan 2035, but also the Crenshaw specific plan. So a lot of what's on there is looking at opportunities to increase bicycle ridership connectivity to existing bike lanes to the station area, but also increasing walkability. So that could be a number of things. But in the third category, I believe, was traffic calming and pedestrian safety. So hinting at the work and the ambitions of Vision Zero, of really just making it safe to approach. We also asked them to look at, safe routes to school and other Vision Zero programs that have implemented strategies throughout our community to really bolster those and harden some of the infrastructure, if you will. So I'll leave it at that. The project depends on it. This is a competitive process. There's no guarantee that they will win or that these projects will come into fruition, but these are the proposed projects that get the project team the most points and gets them closer to the award that will help make the project more affordable, but also provide transit benefit to the general public.
Right. So the thing that I was bringing is that in addition to the plans you've mentioned, meaning the Crenshaw specific plan, the Crenshaw crossing itself, the general plan, the transportation element, whatever its actual title, 2035, there's an actual adopted Crenshaw streetscape plan that's a part and parcel of all of that. And it's still Kyle. The planner assigned to it is still Kyle Winston. Kyle, I think, but Kyle is the same planner who is the planner for all those other things. And it's adopted. I mean, I'm just saying it's adopted, and it was years and years of discussions with this community, the UNNC, West Adams, NC, and I'm pretty sure it would have been Empowerment Congress West, because it grew out of an initiative from the redevelopment plan. But a main part of our discussion now for years, going all the way back, probably 15 years, with the development of the shopping center at Jefferson and Crenshaw going to Bronson, so Union Bank and what's now the 99-cent store, was that the pedestrian walkway between Expo, where at that time the train was planned for, but it's obviously long since been, between that station and that shopping center, just miserable. No shade, any sidewalks, some blight. And how would we ever have people get off the train a walk to the shopping center, and as opposed to disappear right straight to their home. And there's other issues with that. So the first mile, last mile conversations also centered on that, again, with the UNNC kind of conversation. There are obviously stakeholders in North Lamert Park and the area directly to the west and south of the intersection of Expo and Crenshaw, and to the west of Crenshaw, who may also have other goals. But these probably all of the goals were incorporated into the streetscape plan, and it's a little disconcerting that that LADOT, which is conducting a meeting a week from now, still can't tell us what ideas they have, and are they the same as or different from what's been adopted after years of community meetings. So that's where I'm coming from, and that seemingly was sort of where the email threads were coming from. So
Okay, let me ask you this for clarification. Do you have the list of proposed implementations?
I can send you the link to it. It's 100 megabyte document, and it is on the city planning website. I can maybe post that if I can go back. It's really hard for me to go back and forth while I'm also running the Zoom meeting. But yeah,
I hear you. That's fine.
mean,
what
I
I'm thinking though is that
right now the tree plan, for example, but that's a one pager. But I mean, they have specified trees. I don't know if we even like those trees anymore, frankly. But I mean, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there's a whole darn plan. It's about the bus coverings. There's going to be people now who think maybe we shouldn't have covered bus waiting areas because there are other issues with people making homes out of them, and so on and so forth. But it's disconcerting that they weren't really considering the plan, since people weren't so hard on it to begin with.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know, and it shouldn't be a two-way conversation, just you and me. I know Donna is who forwarded me one of those emails, so I don't know if you just forwarded or if you have some thoughts.
Donna, did you get that from Eric?
Sorry, no, Hakeem, I'm on their list for some strange reason.
Okay.
I looked, I was wondering why I kept getting things, and I kept forwarding them to our group, but I am on their email list. I've never, not since early on, sat in a presentation, and I know they were supposed to have done additional. Is that true? Recently?
There's going to be another open house, I believe next week at West Angeles.
Yeah, but
to discuss the project and the implementations.
Yes,
And
it's
that's a
at
part
West.
of the competitive
I'm
process.
interrupting.
They have to do like a community outreach event as part of the competitive process to get the funding. So the things that they're proposing now are like the highest grossing points that they could possibly achieve. So they, originally they were proposing like a bus lane and a lot of other stuff that just didn't make any sense, like a bus lane down Martin Luther King from Crenshaw, basically to Normandy. And I was like, where are people going to go? Like, take it all the way to the 110, if anything. And it just didn't make any sense. So there was somewhat of a process with the CST team here at CD10, Eric and Jonathan auditing a lot of the implementations. And I wanted to be here today because I believe that you guys had the list of actual proposed implementations, but I'm realizing the information you're operating on is from the city planning website, and that may be outdated.
Well, so I did just post on the screen the Crenshaw Boulevard Streetscape Plan, which I downloaded today from the website. And again, I keep circling, which was adopted by the state council, and it wasn't that long ago. And so this is probably, well, it is that long ago. It's 10 years ago. This is the draft. But so Hakeem, I can send you some of this, and it's in the packet, but essentially this is what they did and what the community spent a lot of time on. And you know, it's the normal plan thing where it's a lot of stuff that's too hard to read on the screen. That's what I'm trying to say. But they should not be able to simply ignore this. That's all my point. And the outreach meeting that's being conducted is being held not at West Angeles Church, which is right at the intersection of Crenshaw and Expo. It's being held at a community center they also own, 60th and Crenshaw. So it's in person, it's a workshop, it's the kind where you put little post-it notes on things. So that's good, and it's not in the vicinity of discussion. So it's sort of just a weird, it's a weird lack of outreach and seemingly not understanding where the community is, even that we're talking about. Okay. And we can't know of what they're proposing is good or bad because they haven't shared it. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Can I share my screen real quick? I actually have a list of projects for the Crenshaw Crossing.
Okay,
it's specific. It tells you like which speed bumps, which locations.
Great.
I'm gonna just go ahead and copy this in a document real quick, and then share my screen. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Give me about 1 minute to get prepared.
Okay. So while he's doing that, anybody else who has anything to say that isn't about what he's about to show us, but is about the process?
You were going in and out when you were talking about where the open house is going to be. It's going to be on 60th and Crenshaw.
Yeah, the open house here. Give me a moment. The open house is Thursday, March 23rd, 6 o'clock at the West Angeles CDC Community Room, 6030 Crenshaw Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
And
you guys see that?
Emails.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Better.
Lots of them. 1,000 waiting on me to get back to.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So here's the implementations for Crenshaw Crossing. So there's a speed bump proposed at on Coliseum, both at West Boulevard, South Muirfield, and then from the stretch of Potomac to Chesapeake.
Okay.
These upgraded bicycle classes, these are bike lanes, class 1 through class 4. And those indicate whether it's a protected bike lane or down to like a sharrow painted on the road. So class 3 is sharrows. Those are proposed on Buckingham Road, exposition to Martin Luther King. So there's no parking losses, no reconfiguration, just sharrows added. The Coliseum Chesapeake to Crenshaw Boulevard stretch is an important piece of the connectivity because it connects, high density housing and has really the biggest potential for adding cyclists. So one of the metrics that the team is using is like whatever implementations they're proposing, it has to be able to demonstrate that it will have a net increase in users. So most of the work that's proposed is bike lanes, as you can see. And I'll share this document with you right now, Laura, so that you have it.
Okie doke. Thank you.
And then if you guys have any response to these, or you have any takeaways or any analysis that you want us to consider in the proposal so that DOT is very, very, very clear about what they're going to do or what they're proposing for this project, let us know. But again, this is a competitive process. None of this is set in stone. The community meeting is going to be a very pivotal point in being able to flesh a lot of this out. But again, robust community engagement is a part of the competition. So as long as they demonstrate that there's lots of engagement, you know, that'll score them well. I see we have some questions, Laura.
Marius has his hand up.
Sorry, is that me, Marius?
I did say that. I'm sorry, we're having trouble with my microphone.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, no problem. Yes, Hakeem, thank you very much for sharing this with us. First off, I was wondering if you, or actually Laura, could put into the chat section the time and date of the meeting and everything.
I can do that.
Yeah, thank you. Also for this particular setup, have you considered improvements in road design? I know there's been more calls lately from the public about making sure to separate bike lanes physically from the road. I know that bike riders feel more safe and have more safety when they have a lane that is separate, not just a shared road, but a separate bike lane, to increase the amount of people bicycling around many areas. And I'd just like to get your take on that.
Yeah, so like we do have like some class 2, which are the stripings on the road, not necessarily protected, separated. But a lot of the extensive road that they're looking at, they're also limited in the cost of implementation. So, you know, juxtaposed to getting the $35 million grant, they also have to use part of that money to make these implementations. So there's kind of a balancing act where the developer and DOT is coming up with implementations, but also trying to get the best bang for buck, if you will, to keep the cost of the affordable units down. But one of the things that I did send back to DOT was that there are other streetscape plans that are in play as well. One of which you just saw implemented on Adams, right? And that's not a far shot from this station area. So I told them to think about how can they possibly look at some of the arterial roads that are east and west of Crenshaw for implementations like sharrows and speed bumps as well. But this list that I'm showing you, this was their preliminary list that I saw for the first time Monday. So it's still pretty preliminary and it's subject to change, but we're gonna give a notion to move forward to the Department of Transportation with the grant application Friday.
Okay. I actually have on this class 4 where you've got your cursor kind of thing in.
Yeah.
Class 4 protected bike lane, MLK, Obama to Crenshaw. So that doesn't make sense. Is it Obama to King on Crenshaw? Is it, you see, I mean, in other words, Crenshaw goes north-south and both King and Obama go east-west. So, do you see what I'm talking about there?
Isn't that like a kind of like a triangular
No,
intersection?
not that one. No, Obama's going east to west. Farther south, King is going east to west. And at Crenshaw, farther west, I get lost. I think Obama runs into King, but he got a cough. Excuse me. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. Because Obama's running exposition at this stage.
Yeah, maybe they put the wrong street.
Ooh, excuse me, everybody. Luckily, we're not in person. Okay, so that's my question. Is anybody else have any comments or questions? I did put in the chat the time and place of the meeting. Teresa.
Thank you, Laura. Hakeem, if you could give me some clarification. They need this $35 million grant to make this 100% affordable project, correct?
Yeah, so the grant would go to subsidize the development of the project as a whole.
Okay, and if they don't get the grant, what happens with the viability, or what is the outcome of the project? What happens then?
They have already arranged financing for the completion of the project. These grants that they're seeking are going to basically subsidize their cost overall and reduce their cost of ownership.
Okay,
But
Great.
they can afford the project nonetheless.
okay, thanks.
Rosie,
Yes, so the outreach that's going to happen on next week is vital to them getting this grant. Am I correct?
That's right.
So I've heard nothing, no outreach from them at all. Do you know if there's a flyer, or we'd have to contact them directly for some type of flyer, or we could get it out on social media?
That's a good observation. I don't have that information. All I have is what Laura has is the email. With the
I
date
do
and
have a
time.
flyer. I have a flyer.
Okay, great.
And the flyer is in the agenda packet. It is a PDF. So for social media, it'd have to be converted, I think, to image file. But so, I mean, I can, like Rosie, I can email it to you, but I can't email it to everybody. I can at some point soonish, but not today. UNNC can do an e-blast, but that doesn't help for the people in the other neighborhood council areas.
Right,
So-
that's why I'm trying to get the flyer so that I could contact other neighborhood councils, because I've been to just about every
I know.
meeting they've had. If they had any recently, I didn't get any information for it.
Yeah, well, Rosie, you went for 10 years to meetings. I know that.
Right, so it's like, and they were very much attended, very good. So
Right.
we definitely don't want to have a handful of people there because they don't know that it's even happening.
Right.
So yes, I did get the flyer kind of late last night. And that's why I know where the meeting is. And it's in English and Spanish, and all those parts are good. But what's bad is the word is not out. That's what's bad. It's one thing to make the flyer.
It's happening very quickly is what it is.
Yeah.
I found out that the project was even applying for this in January. They had 2 hearings so far, advancing the application. And now it's really to the point where we have these implementations as kind of getting to the real world. And it's getting beyond just the idea that, hey, maybe we could compete for this funding. So I think that it's imperative that we get that flyer out and get as many voices on the ground in the room, so that we get it right. Because at the end of the day, we just adapted our community with 2 new train lines, and that's making us really a crossroads for a target for development. And we got to get in while the getting is good, if you can accept that statement, because there's no other time that we're going to have this intersection developed. And it's going to take decades before we see any more new hard infrastructure improvement. So if we can get, robust community engagement and then get real walkability improvements, including trees and tree wells, which is a part of this scope as well, I think this is the time. So can we please get that out, Laura?
Oh yeah. I just received it last night. I'm just saying, yes, but I'm a volunteer, and so yes, I'll get it out. And but it won't go to West Adams Neighborhood Council. It won't go to the Empowerment Congress West unless their stakeholders are on our e-news. In other words, you have to sign up for these MailChimp kind of things, whoever you are. We don't have people, so I can anyway. So I'll do the best. I will personally do the best I can.
Thank you.
Donna, you have your hand up.
Question. I know they're doing what they're doing with West Angeles. I think the next time they do a meeting, they should make it more central to the location of this particular project. 60th and Crenshaw is quite a distance on a weeknight. at 6 o'clock. So if possible, maybe we could, after this one happens, maybe do another one that presents to the area closest to this, where it is, they're trying to reach out to, where they met in the past in a closer area, I think. If I'm correct, Rosie, where did you go before?
We had one at several of them at West Angeles.
That was, yeah, the west side of West Angeles.
Yeah, we had a West Angeles, and I think we may have had one or two at Holman.
Yes, I remember the Holman.
Right,
So
and we also had one at Rosie, I think we had a smaller one, more like small groups at Metro's headquarters. So
I'm just saying, maybe there might be a chance for an additional opportunity for presentation. They were well attended, and I think people in the area closest to where it is might want to participate. So that's my suggestion, honey.
yeah, and Hakeem apparently had done a virtual meeting on the 2nd of March. I'm sure none of us knew about that. But you know, if they could also do another virtual meeting. I know that's not a good way to put up post-it notes on things you like, but anyway, they really,
We did one, remember we did one at Nate Holden before,
oh,
and
not,
that worked very well.
yeah, but not on this.
No,
So-
I understand, but that's a good location as well, but Holman is great, plenty of parking, and low and mid-city-ish.
Right. Okay, I'm looking at the clock and we still have more on this agenda. So if we're done-ish with this, and yes, I will send out an e-blast from UNNC. Are we okay to move on to the follow-up to previous cases, ENS, old business, and in particular, the update regarding Murphy oil drilling site?
Yes, we are.
Okay, well then that's what we're here for. And I suspect a combination of Steve, Chris, Richard, and Brittany are more expert than I am on what's going on, but technically, the zoning administrator issued a determination letter regarding the case that we heard a long time ago. And basically this is Murphy oil drill site is at Adams and Gramercy at the top of the hill, and 27th and more or less St. Andrews at the bottom of the hill. The drill site itself is at the top, and a landscaped park-like setting is the last 2/3 of the parcel. And the original conditional use permit to go ahead and have oil drilling at this site was issued in 1959, which is why the case number is VA 1959. And then 15227 is the kind of core case number. The O stands for oil. And then PA6 is project approval or approval of plans number 6. But it's not the 6th time, it's about the 17th time as far as I can tell in my lifetime. But there was a hearing, and there's a new determination letter that adds multiple modifications of the conditions that have been in place. One of the new conditions, and only one on the letter of determination, is that the operator needs to erect a 45-foot high in height structure surrounding and, quote, enclosing the oil production area of the site. The determination letter is posted in this meeting's agenda packet so the community can read it. And the appeal period for this decision ended, I guess, around 4:30 today. So I don't have an update. I mean, among things I don't have an update on is I do not know if anybody filed an appeal. So I don't know who I should ask to speak first. Richard, Steven? Is Steve still here? No. So Richard or Chris, or?
I can certainly talk to the fact that, yes, several appeals have been filed. So this will go into another whole round. So that's an update in terms of what's happening on
Okay.
the appeal side, yes.
Okay. And Richard, I know you are involved in this. Did you have anything to add?
No, Chris is right. The appeal, ENB did file an appeal of this decision. The zoning administrator's decision really reflected the work of this UNNC committee and the recommendations that you forwarded to the UNNC for approval. So you'll recall that there were two motions.
Am I the only one having a hard time hearing Richard?
No, I'm having a hard time as well.
Richard, your volume is very, very low.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you, let's see here, I can put some headphones on.
Still can't hear you.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Barely.
Just barely. Okay.
Yeah, because Richard's very soft spoken.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to speak up here. I hope that you can hear me now. So I'll start again. Chris is absolutely right. ENB did file an appeal, and that appeal will be eventually heard by the South LA Planning Commission. I would just speak to the zoning administrator's letter of determination, and what I was sharing was that, you know, I think that determination reflected the work of this committee and certainly the work of UNNC. And certainly the recommendations by Council District 10. So you'll recall that this committee made two motions. One was the operators' motion, conditions that they were volunteering, and this committee moved to adopt those. And there was a second motion to enclose and electrify the drill site, and that motion also was advanced and passed here. And so essentially the zoning administrator has essentially done exactly what was asked by UNNC. He has incorporated the recommendations from both motions into this letter of determination. So there's a lot of detail in there, but I think maybe that's the most concise summary that I can offer.
So I skimmed because I have not had time to read the whole thing, but I did notice, one of the questions that had been asked is by the community is, why was a new facility to bring gas into the site installed a couple of years ago? And maybe not by the current operator, not sure, but to help operate and burn the gas, turn it to electricity. And part of the determination letter said they can't do that. They can burn off methane, gases from the site, but they cannot bring in from outside the site. So, and obviously the 45-foot tall structure is, why that sort of becomes interesting is that in West LA, the site on Pico, the neighborhood is protected from it because it looks like it's inside a building, so it looks, it's really a structure. And how come the West Side gets that and we do not? But on the other hand, we have sort of a complicated, it's in the HPC, it's in a R3 zone, it's very tall. So I'm not even sure how the operator easily does that. It's sort of a catch-22 because I do not think the zoning administrator can just say it's okay, do that. I think there still has to be the whole process that we are used to. And 45 feet seems rather high. Also not clear where the base is of the 45. Is it at ground level of Adams, or is it down below when the drill site starts? So don't know the answer.
Well, I think the fact that it's under appeal means the answers are not known at this point, what the actual final determination will be. And so I think the important thing is for everyone to read the documents and be informed. And certainly a structure that's being proposed would need to be fully reviewed by the immediate community and groups like planning and zoning and the HPOZ board. So we'll see what comes to pass, but until the appeals are resolved, you know, I think we should wait for the dust to settle.
I just want to add, you know, long fought battle to get to this point. And there are a number of people on this call who I've worked with over the last 2 years to get us here. And I think that the appeals that have come about are, you know, they're the same appellants in the oil lobby that are also seeking to overturn oil obsolescence citywide. The zoning administrator, as Richard said, he pretty much gave us everything we asked for short of shutting the place down. So that's a huge win for the community in a large part, because really one of the first times a zoning administrator has ever done such a thing. It's very historic in a way, and I'm kind of proud to have been a part of it. But I think the notion that the appeals are strong, it might be a little too early to give it that much weight, because the evidence that has gone into the record to make the determination in the first place has been an empirical record of consistent violation of health and safety standards, necessitating the zoning administrator's ability and powers to implement or augment the operation. So I think the findings that the zoning administrator have made are very strong and succinct in comparison to the community impacts. So as you mentioned, it is kind of one of those things you kind of have to wait and see. But the way that our council is organized today with equity in mind and healthy communities and similar city programs, I think everything is kind of well aligned. And I'll leave it there and kind of say, let's say a prayer on it and cross our fingers. But this is kind of monumental. So I just wanted to thank, you know, Richard Parks for his work on getting us to this point, Laura Myers especially for being a community advocate and bringing people together. But I think, you know, it's a strong case. It's really it's a national case. I've seen it in blogs around the country about oil and infrastructure, you know, talking about urban oil drilling. So, you know, stay tuned, but, you know, the future is bright.
Okay. No hands up. Did anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Did anyone else have any other language? Sorry. Follow up to previous cases.
I would like to address something. The fact is, and it's come before this committee and it's also come before UNNC, is that the evidence record is not nearly as clear as has been stated by the previous speaker. In fact, there have been multiple times when statements that were made to committees were found not to be complete. And so I just think we need to let this process play out and see where everything comes to rest, because there, you know, there's a lot of due diligence that must be made on all fronts. So there, you know, so I just think that was a somewhat overstating what our own experience has been when statements have been made and then were found to be only partially correct. So I think that's important for everyone to just wait and see how things settle out. And there'll be opportunities for all parts of the record to be reviewed, but everyone should definitely read all the documents that are attached to it so far.
Completely agree, but let's just also notice that this is just the beginning, right? So the determination is just the beginning. There's these appeals that we have to get through. There's so much evidence that's going to be coming to the record we'll have to get through. But then, when we get down to the actual business of it all, the implementation of the conditions, the actual build out, the construction phase, the monitoring of all of the abandoned wells, all of the things that are in the determination is going to take many, many years to actually accomplish if we get to that, after these appeals and all. But yeah, it will shake out, but this is just the beginning.
Okay. So anybody else on that topic? So on the other topic of updates or old business, Hakeem, do you have a sense of when we're going to get a determination letter from the Planning Commission regarding 1848 South Gramercy? Because it's not been issued yet.
It has not. There's a little bit of reluctance to get it out, but I'm expecting within the next month.
Oh, excuse me again. I am expecting, from what I hear, that there's likely to be a CEQA appeal. So the concern is that this decision doesn't go out secretly, and that's the time frame for an appeal. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not making this. It's not your responsibility, Hakeem. And
I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. Okay. John.
Hakeem, the word reluctance, what does that mean? Who is being reluctant, and what's driving that? If you can share.
All of the commissioners, I believe there's no rush for this particular project. There are other priorities that our office is pushing to get out.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on old business? Follow up. I think if not, we can adjourn. Is that accurate? Good to adjourn?
Yes,
Okay.
let's do it.
Okay, so since there was meeting chat, before I turn off the meeting, anyone who wants to save what's in the chat, it's a little different now. You have to go into the chat where you see to everyone. The three little dots are no longer on the right. They're at the bottom next to a happy face. But you click on the three little dots in order to save the chat. And if you blow it, you may email me at any time and I will send you the chat anyway. And my email, the ones who remember, is Laura, Laura, dot Myers, MEYERS at UNNC.org. So, okay, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting. John, your hand is still up. I think it's still the same up. Correct?
Yes, sorry about that. I'm on my phone, so
I'm going to adjourn the meeting now. Give you guys a moment to save the chat, whoever wants to save the chat. And good night, everybody.
Thank you.